Continuing on with Chapter 3 of Brihat Parashara Hora Shastra, we're going to be looking at the influences of Saturn, the natural dasha system, and the positions of exaltation and debilitation within a chart, as well as additional dignities. Now the dignities, I've covered this in other videos, so if you want to go into a little more detail, you may want to go back to the playlists on this channel, youtube.com/Ryan's Vedic Astrology, and go to the free 52 video learning course on astrology, and find the videos specifically on dignity and exaltation. Because what we're going to do now is we're just going to share what is indicated in Parashara's text. So we're not going to go into the details as we did in that class. And then when we finally get to the use of exaltation and debilitation in chart analysis, which again is quite a long ways from now because we're trying to get these basics down, then we'll get more into the meanings, the uses of the exaltations and debilitations, because I do think that they are often utilized in too simplistic of a fashion because they play into so many different things, so many avashtas, so many house lord indications, and so on. They're not just showing a power of a planet. They need to be plugged into specifics of what that power does. Now, the next step in Parashara's work simply focuses on Saturn. And the verse is simple. It says, Saturn is the eldest. He gives maximum longevity in Naisargika Dasha. That's all it says. Saturn is the eldest. He gives maximum longevity in the Naisargika Dasha. Now, what does that mean? If you're just reading it, you might not necessarily be able to anticipate or translate. But if you've read other texts, it'll give you some indication. The Naisargika Dasha, that's the natural dasha system that we all go through. So it's not Vimshotari Dasha. It's, in a sense, when a planet just naturally dominates the human lifespan. And Saturn is the last one within that dasha sequence. So if you can make it to that time period, well then, you get the maximum number of years within your life, the maximum longevity for a human. Now I'll break this down just briefly. For example, the first year of life for everyone ruled over by the moon. So you want to get a sense of a person's first year of life, and you do already know how to read a chart, well, go see the state of the moon. Read the chart from the moon. That'll give you a sense of what's going on within the person's life from birth to 1 year, the moon. Mars. The length of time that Mars rules over is 2 years. And that's from ages 1 to 3 years old. 1 to 3 years old. So if you want to know what was going on in a person's life, what their experiences were during that time period, as they were developing their will, as they were developing their courage, their character, look at Mars between the ages of 1 to 3 years old. Mercury, which is the next period, is 9 years in length. And it rules over the ages 4 to 12 years old. 4 to 12 years old. So again, that's primarily the time that we're learning. We're learning how to communicate. We're learning how to have friendships, how to be social. We're learning just how to get our head straight, right? Very mercurial thing, how to manage our life. So if you want to know how is a person going to manage their life, look at the years between 4 and 12. And whatever they've done, whatever influences were going on at that time, that will give you a sense of how they learned to manage the rest of their life. It's really fascinating stuff. Venus, this is the next planetary cycle, is 20 years in length. And it runs from the ages of 13 to 32. So again, Venus, the indications on Venus, the placement of Venus, what Venus represents naturally, are all going to get activated for everyone between the ages of 13 to 32. Between 33 and 50, we are in the time period, the natural dasha of Jupiter, which is 18 years in length. 18 years in length. So by this time, we've started to have our family. We're engaged in our profession. We're engaged in our dharma within the world. So we want to look at Jupiter, what's going on with Jupiter within a person's chart, and then we can apply that to ages 33 to 50. The Sun, this is a 20-year natural cycle, and it goes from 51 to 70 years old. So again, what's the sun? Well, that's our time when we're probably taking leadership roles, if we're meant to, within our work, our profession, our community. We're sharing the knowledge we've learned. We're sharing the intelligence that we have accumulated. We're sharing the Dharma that we have been perfecting through that Jupiter cycle during the sun cycle, which again is between 51 to 70 years old. Now, the longest of all of them, again going back to this thread, this verse, that Saturn is the eldest, he gives maximum longevity in the Naisargika Dasha, or the natural Dasha system, natural planetary cycle. Well, he has 50 years. He's given 50 years. And that's between the ages of 71 to 120. So, when we get to 71, we want to pay extra attention to the state, the nature, the placement of Saturn within a birth chart. So these are the natural dasha cycles that we all experience. So it's not based on the moon. It's not based on Rashi dashas. It's just the natural, we could say, maturation or the natural expression of the planets through the human lifespan. Now, exaltation and debilitation. Essentially what we're going to go over is the placements of the planets within the chart when they are exalted, when they are in their most powerful, their most naturally raw, powerful state. Raw power, that's what we want to think about. So we have the sun exalted in Aries. So anytime the sun is in Aries, we're going to have the sun exalted there. The moon is exalted in Taurus. Mars is exalted in Capricorn. Mercury is exalted in Virgo. Jupiter is exalted in Cancer. Venus is exalted in Pisces. Saturn is exalted in Libra. So when we have planets, these planets in these signs, they're going to have an excessive amount of power. Whether it's good or it's bad, well, it depends on your ascendant, depends on the planets that they're with, depends on the planets that are influencing them. And that'll show up more in the Avashtas. You've heard me talk about it over and over again, but the Lajatati Avashtas play a big role in this. We already have a course on that at AshevilleVedicAstrology.com, an MP3 audio course, so you can learn a lot about it there. But we will be getting into the Avashtas in this free course as well, although it may be many, many months away, depending on how long it takes. But now there's also degrees of exaltation. So for example, when the sun is at 10 degrees of Aries, that's its highest point of exaltation. When the moon is between 1 to 3 degrees of Taurus, that is its strongest point, 3 degrees, that's its strongest point of exaltation. Mars is exalted, its deepest exaltation at 28 degrees of Capricorn. Mercury is exalted at 15 degrees of Virgo. Jupiter is exalted its deepest exaltation at 5 degrees of Cancer. Venus is exalted at its deepest exaltation at 27 degrees of Pisces. And Saturn's exaltation, its deepest exaltation, is 20 degrees of Libra. So as planets are moving towards this deepest degree of exaltation, they're moving towards greater and greater strength. And oftentimes people will say that if you're moving into a dasha or a planetary cycle, and that planet happens to be close to and moving towards its degree of exaltation, that helps that dasha work very well. But as a planet moves away from that degree of exaltation, it starts to get weaker and weaker and weaker until it gets to its degree of debilitation, where it's at its weakest point. So all these things that we've just discussed apply to debilitation as well, except opposite. What does that mean? That means that Saturn is debilitated in Aries. Sun is debilitated in Libra. Jupiter is debilitated in Capricorn. Venus is debilitated in Virgo. Mercury is debilitated in Pisces. The moon is debilitated in the first 1 to 3 degrees of Scorpio. I think I got them all. Mars is debilitated in 28 degrees of, pardon me. Yeah, Mars is debilitated 28 degrees of Cancer. So when you know their exaltation, you will also know their debilitation because it will be directly opposite, 7 houses away from where its exaltation point is. Now we have additional dignities. The Mula Trikona. The Mula Trikona, Mula means root, Trikona means trine. So this is said to be the root trine of the planets, or the root of fortune of the planets. And when we have a planet in Mula Trikona, that's actually where it's going to do its best. The planet's going to do its best based on its innate natural qualities. So ideally, you really want the planet in its Mula Trikona. That's where it's going to do its best in regards to functioning in harmony as it's meant to. When you get them in exaltation, that's good. But that's just an extremely powerful planet. It might not be acting in its purest form in harmony with the rest of the chart, but it's got a lot of force to do whatever it rules over in regards to houses, in regards to how it affects other planets by avashtas, aspects to planets. But the Mula Trikona, that's supposed to be the best. That's when you don't have a super powerful planet that might have a little bit of ego going to its head. That's where you've got the planet. That's where you've got the planet that is right at that point where it's functioning optimally within the chart. Now the first 20 degrees of Leo is said to be the Mula Trikona of the Sun. The rest of Leo is considered to be his own house. So just like you're in your own house, when the Sun is in 21 to 30 degrees of Leo, it's said to be in its own house. But the first 20 degrees is the Mula Trikona. The first 3 degrees of Taurus is the exaltation of the moon. And the rest is the moon's Mula Trikona sign. So we'll just say from 4 degrees to the end of Taurus will be the moon's Mula Trikona. The first 12 degrees of Aries, this is the Mula Trikona of Mars. The rest of Aries is Mars' own home, his own house. The first 15 degrees of Virgo, so from 0 degrees to 15 degrees of Virgo, this is the exaltation position of Mercury. The next 5 degrees of Virgo, this is his Mula Trikona. And then the remainder of Virgo, this is his own home. The first 10 degrees of Sagittarius, this is the Mula Trikona of Jupiter, the root trine of Jupiter. The remaining portion of Sagittarius is Jupiter's own home. The first 15 degrees of Libra, this is the Mula Trikona of Venus. The remainder of Libra is said to be Venus's own home. The first 20 degrees of Aquarius, this is the Mula Trikona sign of Saturn. The remaining 10 degrees of Aquarius is Saturn's own home. Okay, so essentially this is how we're going to get the dignities. We've gone over the exaltation. We've gone over the debilitation. We've gone over Mula Trikona and own home. Now these are natural positions of the planets. Later on, actually the next step within Parashara's writing deals with planetary friendships. Again, I've already done videos on planetary friendships, and you can find them in the playlist already mentioned. If you want to jump ahead, so we'll be reiterating that point. But those planetary friendships, that's what gives us the complete dignity, because it's going to take in the natural friendships as well as the temporary friendships, which is something related to what we've just discussed. But in addition, a further qualification of the planets. So again, these are things that are in just about every Vedic astrology book that I know of. It's in The Art and Science of Vedic Astrology, Volume 1, readily available on the internet. But I like to encourage you to think these things through, write them down for yourself, and take notes. Make your own little book, because this will be the best way for you to build this foundation of astrological knowledge. The more you review it, the more you repeat it, the more it will stick within your mind. And you won't have to refer to tables or books. You'll just know. When a planet's in this position, it's exalted. When it's in this position, it's in its best state because it's in Mula Trikona. And again, these things are parts of a much bigger puzzle. So right now you might be asking, okay, well, how does this fit? Well, let's figure out that this is a bolt first, and then we're going to figure out where that bolt goes later. But first we have to identify the difference between a bolt and a staple, for example. And you use a bolt in a different situation than you would use a staple. So let's get the pieces, and then we'll plug them into their specific uses as we go through Parashara's work. All right, so thank you for tuning in, and we'll continue on.